All right, guys, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of Metabolic Flexibility. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a study that, and I'll give you the reference in it. It was in the 1978. If you guys want me to tell you what the name of the study was, this was in because I know a lot of you are saying, well, he's making this up. This doesn't make sense, and I like to make sure I have the study. So this is by Sanders and Sonkin, and it was in the Journal of pH, glucose and free fatty acids turnover in normal subjects and in diabetic patients before and after insulin. So what they did was, and that was in 1979, what they did was they did a study and they said, okay, let's take newly diagnosed diabetic patients and let's measure their blood before and after using insulin. And let's compare that to people that don't have diabetes. Let's do that, okay? So that makes sense. So let's say I have diabetes and I just got diagnosed, and we're going to test my glucose levels and my insulin levels and my utilization levels before and after insulin. And then we're going to compare that to people who don't have diabetes, okay? So a couple things you got to understand is glucose turnover rate. We talked about this in the last video. We talked about glucose being put into the liver, into the bloodstream by the liver, and then we have that's called the disposal, and then we have the utilization, which is the peripheral utilization from your muscles, from your brain, from your red blood cells, from your fat, and from peeing. Okay, so what they found out was there's this feedback loop. And that's very important, right? Because we need to have a feedback loop for our body saying, hey, is there too much? Is there too little? If there's too much, make a little less. If there's too little, make a little bit more. It has to be balanced. So when you take people that have high fasting glucose, when they have high fasting glucose and they're not taking any insulin, their turnover rate goes higher, meaning there's more glucose in the blood. Makes sense. They're eating more food, and that glucose is being put in the blood, and there's more glucose being utilized and being taken out of the blood. That's a higher turnover. And if you measure that to the people that weren't diabetic, they had a lower turnover. They didn't have as much glucose going into the bloodstream, and they didn't have as much glucose being cleared. And you're saying, well, of course, that makes sense. Why would they have more turnover? Well, here's the thing. What doesn't make sense is it's the amount of glucose in the bloodstream and how much it gets cleared and how much it gets utilized is not dependent on insulin. It's dependent on glucose. So the more glucose you have going into the bloodstream, it's going to create a higher insulin spike, and it's going to cause increased removal of glucose. But the thing that we forget is there's more glucose going in. There's more glucose going in. And what that means is that and then when we're talking about a fasting glucose, this fasting glucose levels can be for a minute, can be for 3 days, can be for 3 months, can be for 3 years. It always stays regulated. So that means that that person who is eating more food, who's causing more insulin spikes, is causing more glucose getting out of the bloodstream and more glucose getting into the bloodstream. And that's going to be very, very important, because you're asking, well, why are you telling us this? I'm telling you this because the solution is going to be focused on how much glucose you're pouring into the bloodstream. It's plain and simple. Not so much how much you're taking out, but how much are you pouring in? And I want you to start to think, what does that mean? It means, are you really doing a better job by eating small meals more frequently, pouring a lot of glucose into your bloodstream, increasing your glucose turnover, having insulin feedback loop saying, there's always glucose in here, so we got to keep pouring glucose in here. Is that the way you're going to fix it? Or maybe is it going to be into intermittent fasting, full fasting, and you're saying, oh, I could never do that? Well, then stop watching this. And if you have it all figured out, because I know a lot of you guys have it all figured out, and you guys tell me, oh, if I don't eat, my glucose is going to go down, I'm going to die. On the next video, we're going to tell you exactly why someone would die if they were hypoglycemic. And you're going to be surprised to figure out that it's not because they died of low blood sugar, because our body is not manufactured that way. So stay tuned to the next video and we'll get into that one. All right? See you soon.